You're watching Mobile World Live. Now, for our September themed week, we are focused on how private 5G networks are really shaking up the market at the moment. Here with me to talk about this in more detail is Aniruddho Basu from software-based network player Mavenir. Annie, good to see you.
Likewise, glad to be here and looking forward to the discussion today, Justin.
Thanks for joining us. Now, private networks are certainly getting a lot of attention right now, Annie. How would you summarize the private network opportunity available today?
In one word, exciting. In quantitative terms, we did some market research. The connectivity piece alone by 2025 is expected to be about $5 billion of an addressable market. The application, the value creation on top of that is 5 times as much. Exciting times. We've spent the last 3Gs, that's 2G, 3G, and 4G in the last 3 decades, essentially connecting people and places, basic data, basic voice. The next big transformative journey is the whole digitization of enterprise and industry. So exciting days ahead.
So you say it's exciting. Let's break this down. Let's firstly look at this from a mobile operator perspective, Annie. Why should operators consider private networks as an exciting opportunity?
The harsh truth is that over the last, again, the 3 previous decades, they've had a very exciting run. We've got more than 7 billion mobile subscriptions, more than 5.5 billion smartphones connected. The consumer segment is kind of tapped out. I mean, how many new iPhones can you expect and how much of Instagram can you actively do? Now, the one area that everyone looks to for the next big revenue potential is this whole digital journey, the whole digital transformation of enterprise and industry. Tens of thousands of enterprises that are looking to drive cellular technologies to be the platform on which they baseline their entire transformation on. So enormous amounts of opportunity for operators to be able to leverage their incumbency in terms of macro cellular coverage, but to also pivot and maybe transform themselves into a managed network, managed service provider for enterprises that don't have the skill sets that they bring to the table.
Okay, so that's the operator perspective, and obviously part of that involves the enterprise. But from the enterprise perspective, Annie, I mean, obviously they can't directly monetize the service. So why should enterprises really bother with private networks?
That's a really good question. So private networks are not necessarily a new phenomenon. Private networks, as the name implies, are kind of private in the sense they're custom built or purpose built for specific applications. Even in the era of 2G, 3G, and 4G, there have been things, for instance, most recently called private LTE networks, where national security and public safety agencies have essentially had what you might call a walled garden approach, piggybacking off a larger MNO deployed network. FirstNet with AT&T is one example of blue light services that are offered under the auspices of AT&T for those kind of applications. What's fundamentally different now, however, and why enterprises should bother is that there are fairly unique requirements that they have in terms of security, density of devices, different kinds of use cases, which may not necessarily mean that enterprises need to monetize those networks and sell services on top of them. I think the primary driver now for enterprise and industry is to actually use these networks to cut operating costs and drive digital efficiencies in all parts of their business. So it's more, I would say, an efficiency-based model rather than a revenue-generating model.
And when it comes to the technology itself and actually building out the networks, Annie, I mean, can you give us any tips on how we should really build the network and connectivity platform when we're looking at a 5G and, of course, a few years down the road, a 6G world, when we're building out private networks for enterprise and industry?
Let me take you back to the last 20 years. Telecoms and IT have traditionally been at loggerheads. In the sense, I mean, IT is about 10 times the size of the telecom industry, but they've had 2 fundamentally different approaches to the technology stack and business enablement. Telecoms typically takes about 10 years on an average to come out with a new G. The reason why it takes so long is everything's vertically integrated. It's more of a Mac-like approach or an Apple-like approach. The IT industry, on the other hand, innovation's been more, let's say, fast-paced because the hardware innovation cycles are different compared to software. Applications evolve at their own pace and so on and so forth. What's changing now and what's kind of necessitated in terms of being the next generation of, let's say, the connectivity platforms for private networks is an implosion of, let's say, the best of breed from the IT world and the best of breed from the telecom world. So bring in resilient scale standards from telecoms, bring in fast-paced innovation, agility, and horizontalization from IT and web scale, put them together, and what you essentially have is a network platform which, in an ideal world, should have abstracted complexity for the enterprise and industries. And if I may take you back to 2006, the first big innovation engine was the whole app store for consumers built on top of smartphones. If you are able to create the same kind of paradigm for industries and enterprises to create applications value over the top of a fully automated, all-pervasive horizontal network platform that's scalable, agile, and all the buzzwords that you can think of, and create an app store for industries and enterprises, I think that's what we're trying to achieve with 5G and private networks in this era.
Annie, it's always good to catch up with Mavenir. Thank you very much for the insight into the private network opportunity for both mobile operators and enterprises. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.